Alrighty guys, today we're going to be learning about parameters in Java, so stick around. Alrighty, so you may be asking yourself after that intro, dankydrank, what is a parameter? Well, that's what I'm going to at least attempt to explain in this. If you have any questions at the end, please feel free to leave them in the comments. So let's explain what a parameter is and why it's useful. So let's say we want our own method that will print things out. And this is a bad example, but it's a good example at the same time. So let's go ahead and create our method. It's going to be void because it's going to print something out. And we're going to say print thing. And we'll leave our parentheses empty for now. And so usually you just use system.out.println whatever. So what we're doing here, this right here, when we call this is called a string. And that is a type of object. We'll get into that later. I'll use a number for now. We're going to print out 1. So 1, we're going to print that out. If I run this, of course, it's going to print out down here in the bottom. But what if I wanted to have my own method so I wouldn't need to say system.out.println? I could just call print thing and pass it something and have it print that out. Well, in here, what this is called an argument. And an argument is something that gets passed to a method when you call a method. So in Java, in the system class, there's a method called println. That's a void method. So it would be something like public static void print line bracket, and it says string s. And well, what this does, string s, that is a parameter. So let's go into this in more detail. And here we're going to be printing out an int. So we're going to do print int. And what we want this method to be able to take in is an integer value. So how you do that is in the parentheses here, we're going to say, okay, int n. And what this means is that when you call print int, so like when we called print line up here, if we were to call print int, just with nothing in there, compile it, nothing happens. When we call print int and we put something in here, so let's say 5 or 454, that's not hit 3 keys. So when we call that, it's going to say, okay, we want to print int, and we're in this method. It's basically like, in this case, it would be saying, if we were to remove that, it would be like saying int n equals 54. Or 454. It would be like that, except n gets declared and set equal to whatever the value is in between the parentheses here. And so this right here is called a parameter, and methods can take in parameters. So right now, if we wanted to print int, we could do system.out.println and give it the argument of n, because n is a variable that is in this method, and we can put it in other methods as an argument. So right here, this is an argument. It's something that gets passed to a method when it's called. This is a parameter. It's a spot for an argument to be passed to said method. And this here is another example of an argument because we take what was passed. So 454. So we go, okay, n equals 454. And we're going to print out n, which n is really equal to 454. And this actually, when we get into objects, this affects the object, or the same object that refers to, but I'll get into that more when we get into objects later. And if you wanted to have multiple parameters, say I wanted each one to be printed on the new line, I could do comma space int x, for example. So let's do this. Oh, let me demonstrate that before I get too far ahead of myself here. Compile, run, it prints out 1, then 454. Makes sense? Hopefully it does. If not, feel free to leave a comment about things. So let's bring this back. Print line x. There we go. And so now if we pass this another value, let's go 545, it'll print out, what do you think? 1, 454, 545. So hopefully that makes sense. And in here, it can be other things besides ints. It can be doubles. It can be booleans. Or not booleans, boolean. So let's do 454.6 or 76 and oops. And 545 or just true, for example. And if we were to wrote doubles, didn't I? Yeah, I did. Double n boolean x run, and it prints out what it gets passed. This can also be used with objects later, and it has other uses besides print lines. So let's say we're going to re-implement this method here so that it gets passed a random number from blank to 100 plus whatever. So if we were to pass call random number from 0, it would print out a number from 0 to 100. So let's do that now. So we're going to write our method public static int random num from, and we need the starting value. So the starting value is going to be int n. And if you remember from last time, to generate a random number, you need to first write parenthesis int, which converts this, which actually produces a double between 0 and 1, into an integer, or from 0 up until 1, not inclusive, I believe. Maybe it is inclusive, I'm not sure. But that'll produce a double from 0 to 10, and then we're multiplying it by 10 to get 10 values, as seen here. But here, we don't want just 10 values necessarily. We want 100 values, because we're going to print out from that number to 100 values, or 100 values greater than that number. So int math.random times 100, because we want to print out 100 values, any of them. And then we're going to add n to that. And now what adding n does is we say, all right, we want the lowest value possible to be n. And if we return this, so let me explain a little bit more. So let me call random or system.out.print. Actually, let's bring back printint, shall we? Let's bring back printint, and I can demonstrate how these methods can work in tandem. Public static void print int n. System.out.println n. All right. So this right here, when we pass in a number, so let's say random num from 10. This will print out from 10 to 100, or 10 to 110. What we're basically doing in here is saying, oops, sorry, I just bumped my mic a little bit. Hopefully that didn't sound too loud. We're going to pass this 10, n equals 10. We want values that are 100 values, that's what this number specifies, starting at 10. So that will be 10 to 109, I believe. So if you actually wanted to go to 110, you need to do plus 1. Just how it works. So, because if you say you're counting like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or with 0, if you include 0, that is actually 6 numbers, even though 5 is the maximum. Just how Java works. So we have random num from, and if we run that, that's not going to do anything because it returns an integer. It doesn't actually print anything out. We need to print it out, so we're going to use that method that we wrote earlier called printint. And since that's technically an integer, this random num from has an integer value because it's an int method. We can just put it in the parentheses because it'll get recognized as this will have its value like evaluated. So it will call random num from, and this whole method here will be worth one of those, or equivalent to the random number that is produced by it. And then it's going to call that and pass that to the printint method, setting n equal to that random number, then printing that out. So if we compile and run, we get 59, 90, 64. You get the point. So pretty cool. So let's print out 100 of them. All right. So int I equals 0. I'm going to teach you guys about the for loop very shortly here. I is less than 100. We're going to print out a random number, and then we're going to add to I. You guys, if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you don't know what I'm talking about there, it is all in the loops tutorial. While loops, for loops will be later, but they're very useful. So let's compile this and give her a run. And we just printed out 100 random values down here. And if we scroll up through them, there's 105, 106, 100, 104, 106, 108, 107, 110. That's the maximum right there. It's not going to get any higher than that. Beautiful. I'm just hoping there's not a 111. All right, good. So that's pretty much it. And it didn't start at anything higher than, or go with anything lower than 10. So, guys, hopefully this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, leave them in the description. Other than that, guys, have a nice day. Peace.